On today's show, we're talking about documentation. You want to hear this show? On today's show, we're talking about documentation, specifically after the cabling's done. Welcome to the show where we tackle the tough questions submitted by ICT installers, estimators, project managers, and even customers. We are connecting at the human level so that we can connect the world. If you're watching this show on YouTube, would you mind hitting the subscribe button or the bell button to be notified when new content is being created? If you're listening to us on podcasts like such as Apple or Google or Stitcher or one of those others, would you mind leaving us a 5-star rating? If it's not a 5-star rating, let me know what I can do to make this better so it is a 5-star rating. Those couple little steps helps us take on the algorithms so we can get this content out to more people and educate, encourage, and enrich the lives of everybody in the ICT industry. Thursday nights, 6 p.m. I can do a live stream on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you get to ask your favorite RCDD your questions. But I can hear, but Chuck, I'm driving home at 6 o'clock. I can't be driving. I can't be watching the phone. I'll get in a wreck. That's okay. They're recorded. They're recorded so you can watch them afterwards as well. So make sure that you watch the recordings. You can access all of our information at letstalkcabling.com. All the recorded podcasts, all of the video podcasts, and blog articles. If you got an article you want to write to have included on the webpage, let me know. I'm always open to suggestions. So on today's show, we're talking about Revit. Now, a lot of people, and I got to admit, I'm probably one of them, heard of Revit, but I am not a Revit expert. And we all know that the documentation on the backside of the project is what differentiates good contractors from great contractors. So I brought on an expert with me today who's an expert in all things Revit, and it's Mike Edgar, senior consultant from ESD. Mike, how you doing?
Good, Chuck. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Just to give you a synopsis of me, uh, 20 years in the industry. Before that, I worked for AT&T as a building manager for central offices in Chicago. I work now for ESD, been there 10 years. And probably the last 5 years, we've started to see a real heavy growth in Revit use. You want to know what Revit is?
Yeah, what
So
is Revit?
yeah. So Revit is a three-dimensional drawing tool that has like a fourth dimension, which is the building information modeling information, BIM. That's a term that's sometimes used uh, with Revit, but it's a little bit different. It has like a lot of metadata built into a lot of the content that we put into our projects now.
How is Revit different from AutoCAD? I mean, because aren't they really kind of almost the same thing?
Yeah, so they are similar because they're a drawing tool. Uh, CAD is a two-dimensional drawing tool, and Revit's a three-dimensional modeling tool. So we're actually looking at spaces in all accesses. We're planning for a lot of that stuff up front, where CAD doesn't have that capability of doing that.
Gotcha. So, what are the benefits of using Revit? If I'm trying to decide whether to do my as built in AutoCAD or Revit, what's the benefits of using Revit instead?
So there's a lot of benefits to it. Some of the benefits are documentation. Design up front is a lot easier uh, to make changes, manipulate the design as the design evolves. AutoCAD has some limitations where you can only have two people working on a file at once. And now that we live in this cloud world, CAD or Revit allows multiple trades to be working on a model at one time, simultaneously, even with the architect. So things are planned out better and different things like that.
And here comes the first question that I didn't write down for you because I told you I'd be asking supplemental questions as we went along. So you
Yeah,
said multiple people can have access to this file at the same time, and you mentioned different trades, right? So
yeah,
so if let's say I'm the low voltage guy here in Florida, and I'm the RCDD, and I'm editing it, and the electrical firm who's based out in New York, they can also access that Revit file at the same time, even though we're in different locations.
yeah. So you could be working in a cloud-based model at the same time, and there's some limitations to it, but yeah, you could definitely be working in there at the same time, doing your own design at the same time that the somebody else's trade architect or the electrical engineers in there working on it as well. Yep.
Very cool. So, I like looking at things on the show from different perspectives. Like I just did a show last weekend called Do Better. And I said, here's from an installer's point of view. Here's this. Here's from the employer's point of view. Here's from the customer's point of view. So I want to do this here too. As
Okay.
an installer in the field, how is Revit going to benefit me?
Revit benefits the installer because of the involved planning. There's more involved planning ahead for the installer versus when we would do a design in CAD. There's sometimes it was less planning. We didn't have to model out the cable tray. Now we have to model a cable tray to make sure it actually works and fits together and stuff like that. We didn't have to used to model conduit in the field. We could just kind of draw a line and say, conduit, 4-inch conduit from here to here. Now we actually have to model that 4-inch conduit to make sure that the bend radiuses are appropriate and will fit into the space.
So to make sure that my small brain is grasping what you just told me. So if you let's say that you're designing a telecom room with
Yeah.
basket tray, right? The difference between AutoCAD and Revit. Let me know if I'm wrong, because I've been wrong more than once. Just ask my ex-wife; she'll tell you. So if you're using Revit, you actually see a three-dimensional representation of the room and how the placement of that tray, whether vertically or wherever it is, how it's going to impact the other trades, so you can avoid potential mistakes before you're actually in the field trying to install it. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct, Chuck. Yeah. So when we're modeling cable tray, for instance, we can see mechanical duct or pipes coming through the room that we wouldn't normally see in CAD all the time. So yeah, we can see how thick and how wide the ducts are, for instance, and different things like that. So we can do work our design to avoid that, or collaborate with the mechanical engineer to have them move their design or their ducts so we can get our design
That's
work.
cool. That's cool. Now, for those of you who are listening to this show on the podcast, you might want to pause and then go over to the YouTube channel because Mr. Mike is going to share his screen so we can actually see this in real life. Now, we'll try to describe it as best we can verbally, but again, the best thing to do is going to be to actually watch the video of this. So, Mike, go ahead and share away and let's see a little bit of this thing in action.
Okay, so here, Chuck, this is a typical type of IDF that we might design this type of IDF in CAD, and it looks like it's two-dimensional. Looks like there's a couple of electrical panels here
Yep.
and there's some space reserved. So what we can do in Revit is we can do a three-dimensional box. We could do like an isometric with just a few clicks of the mouse. So here is the actual that room. So we see that we've got the cable tray. We see that we have some mechanical equipment on the wall up here. So you can see like we've coordinated conduits coming into the space. We've coordinated fiber duct. So there's actual fiber duct in this room that we've avoided hitting the other conduits and stuff like that. We have all the different trades. We got fire protection in here. We've got electrical, which is the conduits. We've got mechanical in here. So, um, in CAD, sometimes we would not see this mechanical duct and maybe, or mechanical unit. And this is actually,
Right, as that's loading, because typically the mechanical ductwork would be on the M sheets, not the low voltage sheets, where you'd have to
yes,
go back and kind of cross back and forth. I love the fact that it builds a model so you can actually see this and see how it's going to play. So you can say, okay, well, look, that one cable tray looks like it might not have enough clearance above it because of that ductwork or something.
right, exactly. So that's where um, we can utilize this tool to better coordinate with a lot of the other trades. Uh, so, uh, so that's one instance I wanted to show you. In the same project, this was just one of the IDFs on another floor. We had designed an MDF, a much larger MDF, and it actually has a bunch of cabinets in it. And we actually did chimney containment with this system. And the coordination between the chimneys, the ladder rack, the fiber duct, the electrical outlets, all that, incoming connections between the other floor, the IDF on the other floors, using this tool was um, really an effective way to do design. So we'll give this a second.
So while that's loading, as a customer, I can see the value here because you get to see it built out.
Yeah,
It makes because human beings are visual, right?
yeah,
They take things in a lot better. So if you got a large amount of information, if you can make it into some kind of a picture, it's easier for the human brain to absorb.
exactly. We can actually do virtual walkthroughs through spaces like this now. We do have a few machines in our office that have like the virtual goggles that you can actually walk through a data center or something like that. Obviously, we don't use that for every client or every customer, but yeah, it's you can see the coordination and the different things that are going on here that a CAD project would sometimes not allow you to do. So you can see, um, so they've got the chimneys, we've got the ducts, we've got the cable tray, we've got the dropouts here that drop the cable down into each one of the cabinets.
Is that a smoke
So
detector heading in from the ceiling?
this here is a camera. This is a
Oh,
security
okay.
camera. Yep. But we could bring in that model and we can incorporate that information into this as well.
So let me ask you this. So we're looking specifically at, a telecom room, right? What if there was a room adjacent to this that might have something that might impact the telecom room? Is there a way to look at that?
Yeah. So that's a good question. And this is not just this room. This is actually the whole building. So we can take this and we can start to look at how the whole space gets impacted, right?
So as you drag the lines,
Yeah,
it
I'm opening
actually
up.
opens up so you can see the other floors. I'm just saying that so that people who are
Yep.
listening to the podcast understand. So
Yeah.
now we
Yep.
see the telecom room, what looks like an office on each side of that, and you even showing the floor below it, which
Yep.
shows a small IDF or small telecom room,
Right.
and it's even showing the ceiling below it too. So you can see the ceiling grid, the ductwork, which is really great information if you're doing like core holes and stuff like that. So that way you know where it's going to be poking through.
Exactly. So to get back to to try to answer your question, how does it uh, help in installers out in the field, a lot of this stuff can be visually coordinated and seen ahead of time. There's ways we can do clash detection and say, like, if maybe there's an I-beam or something and we have a duct going through there or a cable tray going through there, we can, that'll show up here a lot easier for us, and it'll red flag it before it becomes a red flag in the field. And then you got your guys in the field maybe standing around waiting
So,
for the
so make sure
answer.
I understand. Make sure I understand, because again, I'm just a simple cable guy, right? You say clash detection. That
Yeah.
means like when you open it up, if because multiple people are entering in this, right? The low voltage people, the electrical, the HVAC, the sprinkler, and the drywall guys, and all that stuff. So if someone, if the sprinkler, here's a good example. The sprinkler guys are updating their Revit. If it comes through at the same height as our cable plant that we plan, it'll tell us that before we get in the field. Is that what you mean by clash detection?
Yeah. So we can run a clash detection on the model, and it'll highlight and give us a list of all the things that it doesn't really see that it's a feasible install. So we can address a lot of that stuff ahead of time.
That's my note to all the fire sprinkler guys. Get Revit and use it, and quit running your stuff through our cable bundles. Just saying, right?
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
so when you built out that telecom room, did you draw all those items? Did you draw the racks and the patch panels and the managers?
So no, a lot of the content that you're seeing is the actual cabinet is it's called a family. So in Revit, we talk about families, and a lot of the manufacturers, some manufacturers in the industry have families that are being created. And for those that are visually watching us, you can see all the metadata information that's embedded into this cabinet. I can literally click on a button and change the height, the width. I can open the front doors. I can open, so that just opened the doors of the cabinet.
So you can
Uh,
check for clearances and stuff to make sure that it doesn't
swing
bang into
clear,
something.
yep, swing clearances and all sorts of stuff. Um, we can change the clearances from the left to right, top and bottom. We can do all that stuff. So now you can see that this particular cabinet actually has the doors opened.
So let me ask you this. So it's doing clash detection for like you said, for when you swing the door open, or the example that I used with the sprinkler pipe and stuff. Um, is there code stuff put in here as well for minimum of 36 inches of clearance for the pieces that have active equipment and stuff like that, or is that just something you still got to pay attention to?
You still have to pay attention to codes because the codes are different in each jurisdiction, and they
Good
do
point.
slightly change from city to city, for instance. But yeah, so you do have to be somewhat aware of code issues and different things like that still. But I mean, eventually, a lot of this stuff is going to have more data embedded into it, and weights, capacity, loading capacities, all sorts of things. Cable trays will have, they'll be able to maximize how many cables you can put in a cable tray, so we never have a situation
Right.
where one's overloaded. Or conduit fill charts could be embedded into the conduits, and then when you actually drill down to like to the patch panel and to the ports. I mean, this is all families. So that's just one port. So when we're doing the design, we can actually do port assignments. We can run patch panel schedules now. We can do labeling schedules all up front rather than trying to figure out what the owner needs 10 months from now, when it's in construction and the guys out in the field wanting information on how the owner wants it labeled. A lot of that stuff can be done here and now.
Yeah, it's better to be proactive than reactive, and it's better to plan it out in advance, knowing that, plans get thrown in the trash sometimes, but at least if you have a plan, you've given it some thought ahead of time. And circle
Yeah.
back around, one of the things I want to touch base on is you mentioned the weights. And that's one of the things that I think is a weak area when it comes to estimators and designing stuff, because we don't really look at the weight of the racks and the panels and the cable and all that stuff, because the floors have a structural integrity that you don't want to exceed them. And there's even some stuff in the TDM that says that. So what you're saying is, would the Revit clash detection enable or catch that?
I don't know whether we're there at that point yet. Um, Obviously, the loading of the floor information would have to be in the model itself. And a lot of our content for ICT design is very, I'll call it early in its infancy.
Right.
A lot of Some of the manufacturers don't have some content yet.
I was just getting ready to ask. That was my next
Yeah,
question. Was do all the manufacturers, do they are they have they all bought in, and is it a plethora of information from all the manufacturers, or is it a spattering? One manufacturer does a little bit more than others. Some do, some don't.
yeah, just like anything, some manufacturers have a better vision of the future and what some of this stuff might be capable of doing. Uh, and it's costly, there's a cost for somebody to go in and write and create these families for the manufacturers. So it's developing, but it's not quite there yet.
But from a manufacturer's perspective, it's worth the investment, because if you're doing that and your competition's not, that's going to help your users or your design firms, right? Come
Yeah,
up with stuff, and they're more likely to spec your stuff because they can put it in ahead of time and find the conflicts and know the issues while they're still, lines on a
yeah.
piece of paper, as opposed to down the
It
pike. So
even
that gives you
takes
a
it
step up.
Yeah, it even takes it one step further and actually allows for estimators to automatically uh, just print out a bill of material.
Oh, you don't have to do rake offs.
You don't have to do any takeoffs.
What's an estimator going to do now?
Maybe golf more. I don't know. But changes, you had mentioned about changes. Changes can be done very quickly too. So if we wanted to change this to um, orange, we could just click on that and just changed it to orange. That changed the part number, that changed the inventory, the bill of material is all affected by this.
Now here's another one of them questions that I told you I'd probably think of on the fly, and if you don't know the answer, just say you don't know the answer. It's fine.
Sure.
So you said that it pulls off the bill of materials. So estimators generally will estimate one of two methods, right? Either off of the bill of materials, or they'll do a task related, right? So for those estimators who are building their estimates off of the bill of materials, this obviously gets them the material price. Um, is there a way to import this bill of materials into like either like an Excel spreadsheet that they may be using, or maybe one of the estimating software packages?
Yeah, so we can easily take a schedule. Now we have this tool here. It's called a schedule, and we can just simply create, just by double clicking on that, we can pull up an Excel spreadsheet looking schedule, and we can export that um, to Excel very easily. It'll give you counts, it'll give you depths, it gives you it builds the actual part number for you. It tells you what it is. Um, so it's so right now Revit's still kind of in the infancy, kind of. So we don't normally on regular projects share the model with contractors, but eventually we will be sharing the model with them, and they'll be able to get their budgets much better and different things like that, based on the information that's built into the model. Yeah.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this question. So this obviously looks way more complex than AutoCAD, and AutoCAD's complicated by itself, right? So,
Yeah.
what are the challenges of using and learning Revit, either as a standalone product or from somebody who has a vast amount of experience in AutoCAD?
Yeah, so obviously there's a learning curve, right? So there's definitely a learning curve. Some of the other challenges are you have to we went through computer upgrades because the amount of um, we often call them heavy models versus light CAD. CAD's just two-dimensional. This has got so much information. It's a much larger file typically than a CAD file. So those are some challenges on the hardware side. You have to upgrade your computers. There's servers that have to be in place that can handle the amount of traffic that's going to have to that can handle this size of a file.
Yeah, plus I can imagine, if let's say, for example, if you were looking at that 3D model of the telecom room and you decide, okay, well, you know what, you want to move the ladder rack up 6 inches. Well, the computer's got to crunch all them numbers.
Yeah, yep. So you would just simply just click on that ladder and you can just simply change the height. We can just say instead of doing 13.3, we can do 6 inches, maybe higher or lower.
Hmm.
And then we come back over here. That's going to actually push it up 6 feet. So it actually went, I think, up 6 feet. Um, but that's how fast it can happen. But you're right, a lot of background mathematics. So
Hmm.
there, it moved that up 6 feet. So it gave us the exact height, dimensions, all that stuff right here. And we can on the fly change things, move things, shuffle things around.
Right.
It's much easier to do it here than it is in the field, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. It's way easier to change it on a drawing than it is out in the field. So let me ask you this. So
yeah.
let's say you're showing cabinets in that telecom room, right?
Uh,
What happens if they decide they want to change that last cabinet to a 7 foot relay rack? How hard would that be?
Yeah, so we would just go to the drop down mat over here and we could just simply go to a two-post rack and it just changed it to a two-post rack.
Oh, nice,
So
nice.
there's a post rack. So changes can be done and again, it's really important. All the part numbers just changed, the information, the bill of material, the weights, all that stuff just changed automatically. Yeah. So this is kind of like the beginning of smart building, big data. This is all part of that, and automatically scheduling power panels so they don't get overloaded, or in our case, patch panels so they don't get overloaded, or you're short a patch panel here or there. That doesn't happen in Revit.
Right. So when you change over to the Revit program and is it a license model? Is that how that works?
Yeah, it's an Autodesk, just like CAD is. It's Autodesk. It's owned by Autodesk, and
Okay.
you got to do licensings and different things like that, similar to AutoCAD.
So is there a support function in there as well, like a frequently asked questions or maybe a
Yeah,
chat box where if you have questions, because I could see the I really love this. I mean, I think this is fantastic, but I could
yeah,
see as somebody's brand new to Revit from the AutoCAD world or somebody who just got promoted to be the new assistant estimator struggling with this at first. So is there some kind of support function within Revit?
yeah. You would definitely want to take some classes. There's classes at your local junior college, maybe, or different things like that. You would definitely want to do that. Now the classes for Revit mostly revolve around architectural and MEP. So ICT, like I said before, we're still kind of in the infancy of building the families and getting that stuff ready to actually be used in the field more often. 5 years ago, 10% of our projects were Revit. Now it's probably closer to 70 or 80%.
Nice.
We're doing Revit stuff for our clients.
So the low voltage in Revit's kind of like the Division 17 initiative when we were trying to get incorporated into the AIA documents.
Yeah, there's a lag. There's a
Yeah.
lag here for us. So that's
And
what
that
we're.
and that's a reference for people who are new may not catch that. So nowadays we are in the AIA documents, right? Where the AIA documents breaks the work down by divisions. And I don't remember what we are off the top of my head. We're what, division 22, 23, 24, something like that. So you
27.
get the 27, that's right. So the divisions used to end at 16, and
Yeah,
16 was the electrical. We used to get lumped in with the electrical if we even thought about. So
yeah,
for about a year or so, there was a big push by Bixby, and this was like, we're talking 10, 15 years ago. Division 17, they had pins at the Bixby conferences and all that fun stuff
I
to
remember
get us
that.
in those AIA documents. And so that's kind of what that reference was. So
Yeah,
yeah, very cool. So
yeah.
so you seem to be pretty well versed with Revit. So you must be staying in touch somehow with learning and keeping up to date. Do you know what's in the future for Revit? For
Yeah, so I mean, sky's the limit, right? A lot of analytics could be pulled out of these projects from 30,000 square foot view, trying to look at what the industry is doing, where the industry is going, how much cable's being pulled or installed. You could probably pull a lot of analytics from a lot of this information. Um, I personally see like maybe in the future that we'll do like virtual cable testing, making sure things are not out of distance, um, different things like that. We might be like logging these cable tests into some sort of cloud-based system. And then actually when things start getting tested in the field, we may be notified via email or something like that, some sort of a notification that says, hey, they're starting to test the cabling out there. And, as a specifying engineer, it's good information for me to know where that project's at so I can touch base with them. Maybe I want to schedule my punch list visit next week or something like that. So it's really sky's the limit. There's a lot of information in here. There could probably be more information. And as the more information gets put in, we'll be able to, analyze more of the analytical information that's in there.
This is interesting stuff. I'm glad you reached out to me, Mike. I really like this. The only thing that I think is missing is that installer standing on his ladder working on the cables on the cable tray.
It's funny you say that because if we probably looked through this model at some point, we would probably see people.
Really? They have people in them?
So, yeah, yeah, there's people sometimes in here. They're obviously a family. It's a family of a person standing there.
Right.
But a lot of times you'll see renderings that are done. Well, a lot of those renderings are now done right out of Revit, and you'll see a person sitting there reading or something like that. I don't know if there's any people in this particular model, but I have run into where the architects will model people walking through a space or occupying a conference room or something like
Yeah,
that.
that just reinforces the whole. So in photography, one of the hardest things to do is show the depth of something or how the relationship of sizes of things. So
Yeah,
if you put a Revit person inside of this that 6 foot or 6'1", you can easily see the relationship of the chairs and the desk. And I like the conference room that you were showing there just a second ago.
yeah,
I could see that being a huge advantage for someone trying to design the AV system for that room because
absolutely.
you
Yeah,
can see everything.
you can see everything. And earlier you mentioned like coring. So here's some workstations. Like we can see where the workstations can be cored now, where they can't be. We've got sound masking speakers in here. It's a complete like, here's some AV stuff. It's actual like real life stuff. And we're getting to that point where we can much better see things and design things in a smarter way.
Right. Mike, I certainly appreciate you taking the time out and showing us Revit today. If somebody wants to get in touch with you or your firm to help you design some interesting stuff like this, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, my email is medgar@esdglobal.com, and esdglobal.com is our website.
Very cool.
So check that out, and there's there's numbers and stuff on the website you can call and get a hold of us.
Very cool. Any parting thoughts that I might not have covered?
No, not that I can think of.
We're going to dive more into that testing thing that you mentioned.
Yeah.
We're going to do a follow-up show about that because that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I think it's something that some of the testing companies should be at least looking at, I think.
Right. So I know some of the test manufacturers listen to this show.
Do they?
I want to hear from you guys, and let's start this conversation.
Yeah. Yep.
Mike, thanks again, buddy. I appreciate you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you as well. Thanks.
Right. Until next time, everybody, remember, knowledge is power.
That's it for this episode of today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.